An Acura Integra Type R recently sold for $82,000. 10 years ago, you could get one for $10,000. So how does a simple front-wheel drive Honda go from being just another street racer to a sought-after collectible, fit for a multi-million-dollar collection? Well, it has to do with the Type R's surprising rarity in the US, the growing craziness of the JDM collector's car market, and the Integra Type R status as one of the greatest front-wheel drive cars ever made. So let's dig into the history of the Integra Type R and find out what made this one of the most appreciated Hondas on the planet, and to see what the newly announced 2022 Integra has to live up to. I'm Guff, this is Albon, let's get started. Before we begin, we're giving away $1,000 to one lucky viewer, and all you have to do is subscribe and drop a comment below to win. Now, back to the video. The Acura Integra Type R is arguably the greatest front-wheel drive car ever made. And by arguably, I mean definitively, factually. Of course, it wasn't always that way. The Integra marque started in 1985 as a more luxurious and sport-oriented sibling to the Honda Civic. It succeeded the Honda Quint, which was basically a 5-door version of the Civic, but it was supposed to be more upscale. This new Integra, along with the Legend, was used to launch a new luxury division for Honda in the United States. That division was called Acura. Acura, along with Infiniti for Nissan and Lexus for Toyota, was a way for Japanese car makers to break the stigma they had created for themselves as boring, econobox-creating car brands. And so, in 1986, Honda launched the first-generation DA Integra as a Acura in the USA. And it started life as a 3-door hatchback, powered by a 1.6-liter 4-cylinder dual overhead cam fuel-injected engine called the D16. And this little 1.6 put down 113 horsepower and 99 pound-feet of torque. Now, this doesn't sound like much, but this was a big deal for the time because technologies like dual overhead cam and electronic fuel injection were generally reserved for higher-end cars at the time. By the next year, Honda had also released a 5-door hatchback version for global markets as well as a 4-door sedan for the Japanese market. But despite the variety of form factors and the advanced engine technology, the Integra wasn't fooling anyone into thinking it was a luxury car. In Japan, the Acura brand didn't even exist, and so this car was just another basic Honda that slotted right in under the Prelude. And in most of Europe, the car was aimed even further down market, with no option for painted bumpers, AC, or power windows. Sadly, the Integra's goal of being a upscale Civic was, to put it bluntly, a failure. Honda thankfully realized this very quickly, and in just 4 years' time, they had a second-generation Integra ready to go. The second-gen DB Integra was introduced in 1989, and considering the lackluster performance of the first-gen, this one needed to prove itself. Honda leaned into their engine technology expertise and developed an engine with a brand new variable valve train system called VTEC. VTEC stood for Variable Valve Timing and Lift Electronic Control. The engine they put it in was called the B16A, and it was another 1.6-liter dual overhead cam 4-cylinder, but this time it made 170 horsepower with an 8,200 RPM redline. This was a huge jump from the old D16's 113 horsepower, and in Japan, you could get that VTEC goodness in any flavor you liked. You could get either the RSI model, which was a lightweight, stripped-out, base model version of the Integra, or you could get the XSI model, which was a more optioned-out, luxury-oriented trim. But if Honda learned anything from the DA Integra, it was that just a cool engine does not a good car make. And so the DB Integra came with fully independent double wishbone suspension all around. A massive leap forward compared to the solid beam axles that were in the first generation. This Integra handled like a dream and was a top-notch front-wheel drive sports car out of the box. In North America though, things were a little bit different. Our Integra came in RS, LS, and GS trims, and all of them came equipped with the B18A1 engine, which was a 1.8-liter, 130 horsepower 4-cylinder engine that was painfully missing the one thing that we actually wanted: VTEC. But much to our surprise, Honda didn't leave us hanging, because we got our very own special engine just for the American market. This was a 1.7-liter dual overhead cam 4-cylinder called the B17A1, and it made 160 horsepower at an 8,000 RPM redline, all thanks to the almighty VTEC. This version was called the GSR, and if you were in North America, this was the one to get. And considering that less than 5,000 GSRs made it to North America in its short 2-year run, people were clamoring to get their hands on one. The GSR was America's first glimpse into what would become one of Acura's legends. Not to be confused with the Acura Legend. I just meant a glimpse of a legend from Acura. Never mind. None of that really matters because Honda had something better up their sleeve anyways. You see, 4 years later, by 1993, Honda was getting ready to announce the next generation Integra. But this year, it wasn't just gonna be some boring facelift. You see, Honda had to go big or go home, because by this point in time, Honda was on top of the world. Let me explain. Honda really loves racing, and by 1991, they had won 6 Formula One Constructors' Championships back to back. And with a team of legendary drivers like Nelson Piquet, Alain Prost, and Ayrton Senna, they had taken 5 Drivers' Championships as well. And as we had talked about before, the second generation DB Integra was introduced in 1989. But at the exact same time, Honda was also showing off another very special car, the NSX. We did an entire video on the NSX, which you can see here, but we can't talk about the Integra without giving some background on Honda's Halo car. The NSX was Honda's showcase to the world that they were truly a world-class sports car manufacturer. The NSX had all of the best technology at the time: an ultra-rigid aluminum monocoque, forged double wishbone suspension, titanium connecting rods, and on and on and on. It was even developed with a Formula One driver's careful input. All this to say, the NSX and Honda were on top of the world at the time. And in 1992, the NSX introduced us to Honda's new Type R moniker. Now, while the NSX was always intended to be a world-class supercar, the engineers had to make some compromises between daily drivability and sports car performance. But for those that didn't want compromise, Honda gave them the NSX R. The Type R lost all the fat. Sound deadening, audio system, AC, spare tire, traction control, all of it was axed because race car. So now you could own and drive an NSX just like the one you saw on TV, winning touring car championships and racing in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And this created an ever-growing excitement around the NSX as well as the Honda brand. And people knew that an amazing halo car like the NSX-R meant that there was a chance for a little trickle-down effect on the rest of Honda's sports car lineup. And considering what an absolute knockout the DB Integra was, the announcement of a new generation of Integra had everyone holding their breath. 1993, Honda, to much fanfare, released the third generation DC Integra in Japan. It was a much more modern, curvy design that looked undeniably like a sports car in its 3-door hatchback trim. The front end, however, was a little bit of a point of contention. Honda went with a 4-headlight front end, which looked a little insect-like. Some people liked it, but most people didn't, which caused a little bit of controversy, which Honda addressed in later years. But forget about the looks. What about the engines? Well, the base model was powered by the B18B, which was a 1.8-liter 4-cylinder that made 142 horsepower without the use of the magical VTEC. Japan got a new trim called the SI, which used the B18C engine. And thanks to VTEC, this 1.8-liter made 176 horsepower, making it the most powerful engine in an Integra yet. However, in the US, things were once again a little bit different. We received 5 models: the RS, LS, SE, GS, and GSR. The RS, LS, SE, and GS were all basically the same thing, but with a little bit of options here and a little bit of leather there. But all of them were powered by the 140 horsepower B18 B1. But the GSR, well, that was still the chosen one. The GSR had most of the trims of the GS, but this time with a B18 C1 engine, making 170 horsepower. One thing in common with all of the trims is that they all got stolen on a weekly basis. I wish that was a joke, but it's really not. Drop a comment below if your Integra got stolen. There's probably a couple of you out there. But even with the extra VTEC ponies, neither the GSR nor the SI really seemed like it was what Honda was truly capable of. And that's because it wasn't. You see, behind the scenes, Honda was still working hard at perfecting the Integra, but it wouldn't be until 2 years after launch that we would see the pinnacle of the DC Integra. Remember the NSX Type R? Well, by the mid-90s, the NSX-R was considered one of Honda's greatest engineering achievements, and the Type R badge that lived on the back of the NSX was ready for its next platform. So in 1995, Honda finally released the Integra Type R. It was first released just in Japan, and alongside the controversial front-end facelift, it came with a number of race-bred improvements. At the top of the list was the newly developed B18C engine that made 197 horsepower at a near 9,000 RPM redline. This was mated to a close ratio 5-speed manual transmission as well as a helical limited slip diff. The engine was hand-built by Honda's skilled craftsmen, with hand-ported and polished heads as well as brand new internals. And if that wasn't enough, the Type R had a fully strengthened and reinforced chassis, along with lighter wheels, upgraded suspension, and even a thinner windshield just to save a little bit more weight. The result was a superbly capable sports car, one that drew praise from everyone that drove it. If the mid-engine rear-wheel drive NSX Type R was the perfect Japanese supercar recipe, then the front-wheel drive Integra Type R was the perfect Japanese sports car recipe. And just to make sure that that racing heritage was known, Honda even made the hero color of the Integra Type R Championship White, which was a tribute to the Honda RA272 race car that Richie Ginther drove in 1965. And by some stroke of luck, it wasn't just a Japanese exclusive like the NSX Type R was. Honda brought the car to a worldwide market, including North America in 1997. Outside of Japan, oddly enough, we still got the buggy quad headlights, but some people, like myself, preferred it that way. In the USA, the Integra Type R received a slightly different engine, this one called the B18C5. It made a slightly different 195 horsepower, but it retained all the VTEC goodness of the original. But it didn't matter what part of the world you were from, the Integra Type R was universally loved. Best motoring pitted it against cars like the WRX STI and even the Skyline GTR, and it held its own. Journalists everywhere were swooning for the Integra Type R, with Evo magazine calling it the greatest front-wheel drive performance car ever. Somehow, a plucky little front-wheel drive Honda went from being a failed experiment to one of the most revered sports cars on the planet. Honda, of course, didn't rest on their laurels. In 1998, they revised a number of things like the transmission, the brakes, the bumpers, and after a brief intermission of no 1999 model, in 2000 they brought back an upgraded version yet again with new cams and drive shafts. But as with all great things, there was an end for the Integra Type R. And in 2001, the final DC2 Integra Type Rs left the factory in order to make way for an entirely new generation of Integra. The fourth generation Integra, now called the DC5, was an all-new design that really brought the Integra into the new millennium. But for many people, this generation was a step back in a variety of ways. The engine was probably not one of those ways, because this new generation Integra, now called the Acura RSX in the United States, came with the venerable K20 engine. This was a completely redesigned 2-liter dual overhead cam 4-cylinder that made 160 horsepower in its base trim, but made 200 horsepower in the IS or Type S models. But that was about all that was good with the car, because this time the Integra was based off of the 7th generation Civic platform. This meant that it was bigger in every dimension, heavier, and it meant that they got rid of the fully independent double wishbone suspension in favor for a front McPherson strut and a rear trailing arm setup. It certainly wasn't all bad. This Integra was a nice handling car, and it even came in a Type R version, although exclusively in Japan. The Type R came with a 220 horsepower K20A, along with the usual weight reduction, big brakes, and upgraded suspension. But despite all that, the DC5 Integra never truly managed to capture the hearts of enthusiasts like the DC2 did. But perhaps that was just a sign of the times, because the market for sports coupes was dwindling, and Honda had started to move past its focus on racing heritage in favor of making more widely appealing volume sellers. And so in 2006, the DC5 ended production, and the Integra name was finally laid to rest once and for all. Well, until now. In a surprise drone show at Monterey Car Week in California, Acura announced that the Integra would be returning to production. Acura's vice president even claimed that it would have the same fun-to-drive spirit and DNA of the original. Now that's amazing news for Honda enthusiasts, but there's a catch. This new Integra will be a lot more DC5 than DC2 because it's confirmed to be based off of the 11th generation Civic. Now, this could go a number of ways. It might just be another Civic Si, or it could be the two-door Civic Type R that we've all been waiting for. There's really just no way to know right now. But either way, it's an exciting time for car enthusiasts who've been longing for the days of the DC2 and remembering a time when Honda was king. But let's be honest, if you really wanted a DC2 Integra Type R, you could just go pick one up for cheap, right? They're 20-year-old Hondas after all. Well, that may have been true 10 years ago, but it certainly isn't now. In the mid to late 2000s, a clean example of an Integra Type R would fetch somewhere in the low teens, with most examples landing in the $10,000 to $13,000 range. Now, this seemed pretty reasonable considering the original list price of the Integra Type R was about $23,000. Especially clean cars like this Phoenix Yellow 2001 fetched up to $20,000. Which, considering it was just one of 650 produced in this year and spec, it's not a bad deal. But as time went on, the values of these Integra Type Rs rose slowly but surely, with clean examples selling for right around the original MSRP by the mid-2010s. Now, it's great and all that clean cars were selling in the 20s, but what about the real good stuff? The collector grade cars? Well, in 2016, we got just that when a 2001 Nighthawk Black Pearl Type R sold for $34,250. This was big, nearly 10 grand more than the original MSRP of the car. And that was followed immediately by a 2001 Phoenix Yellow car that sold for $34,000. Now, we were cooking with gas. By the end of the year, another 62,000 mile Phoenix Yellow example sold for over 30 grand. And the trend was now becoming clear. There was finally a collector's market emerging for the Integra, and considering the surge that was happening for all of the other JDM Legends, it was just a matter of time for the Integra Type R. The next year, 2017, saw our first $40,000 sale, and 2018 saw back-to-back record breakers. But if you thought that was the top for these little Hondas, well, you'd be wrong. In 2019, a championship white Integra Type R with just 27,000 miles sold for $65,500. This blew every previous auction out of the water. And while this car was clean, many people still couldn't believe that a 90s Honda could fetch this much money. Well, I think you know what's coming next. Just 3 months later, a 1997 championship white Integra Type R with just 6,000 miles. Yes, that's 6,000 miles found its way to auction. Now, this thing was immaculate. You could eat off the underside of that car, it was that clean. And after a week of hard bidding, the hammer price on this little Honda was $82,000. Dang near 6 figures for what was essentially just a souped up eco car from the 90s. Needless to say, this sale raised the tide for ITR values across the board. And while there were still high mileage examples selling in the teens, there were also multiple collector's grade cars selling in the $60,000 range. Through 2020 and 2021, the Integra Type R market remained elevated, with another $65,000 sale, as well as another championship white with 85,000 miles selling for $51,000. Now, fun fact, the owner of that white Integra Type R decided that he would go for one last little joyride before collecting his $50K and handing over his precious Integra Type R. Sadly, there was nothing joyful about that drive because he crashed and totaled it. Really sucks for the buyer, but I guess that means that 98 Integra Type Rs are just a little bit rarer now.